Perfect.
Well focused, Arlene. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for taking the precious morning time. I know it's never easy to carve out at 9 a.m. on Pacific time. It's probably even more challenging for folks in other time zones. So really, really very grateful to have of you here. Um, yeah, today's topic is about marketing operation and systems. Jacqueline is gonna be generously sharing the knowledge. So part of the reason I'm particularly excited about the conversation today is, as a data person, right? A lot of things I do are dependent on the fundamental system and the architect underneath. There are times in my prior life, for example, in Capital One, in Merkle, where I took things for granted. Things work out so well, the marketing ecosystem, the data source, everything connects so well. So I was focusing on running so fast. But then when I step into some of the startup scenes, right, whether Grammarly or whether the pre-Grammarly on some other places, well, my journey in point started by me joining. There wasn't even a database, so I was coding each line of the database with the engineer, and we gradually built out the Postgres, we gradually built out the Snowflake, and finally got to a place that's functional. But along the way, I realized the criticality of having a solid right marketing system, MarTech, however you want to call it, right, and the operational component behind that. It's such a critical building block that many don't know what they don't know, right? For the expert who know how to set it up, right, everyone else is happy and running. But I definitely run into more than a few cases where people are just scratching their head, right? What's going on? Why things are so slow, right? Why the email gets, we just talked about, why the email keep getting 30% bounce rate, right? What's going on? And how do I track all the data? Why engineers never have time, right, to help me record all the information? If they don't do that, I can't do the analysis. I don't know how to optimize, and yada yada yada, right? So a lot of things can happen. So here you go. I would love to hear your Jacqueline. You help share your wisdom with us today.
I'll do
To
my
start,
best.
right? Yeah, maybe please give an intro, and we'll dive into the topics of marketing operations.
Sure thing. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Holly and Bei. Excited to be here and supporting ExponentialX and the great community you're building. I'm Jacqueline Freedman. I most recently was at Grammarly, but now I have since started my own consultancy specifically on marketing operations and marketing technology, not just for B2B companies, B2C companies, but B2C2B, which is a particularly unique niche that a lot of folks are hearing about as it relates to PLG or product-led growth, product-led sales. What are those things? If you've got questions about it, we can definitely get into it. But in terms of that's what I'm up to right now. Bei, do we maybe want to talk a little bit more about my past or things along those lines?
Yeah, please do. We can start with your prior experience briefly, and before I have so many questions, so let's just start with that, and we'll go on. We'll go on.
Perfect. Well, as Bei mentioned, we met at Grammarly. We started within a few months of each other, and to his point, we didn't have a database. We didn't even have an actionable way to get all of our marketing data into one place. And so I was the first marketing operations hire, and I founded the team to build up our B2B architecture and infrastructure. And along the way, I realized our B2C side of the house needed some help. And so I kind of did a double role and ensuring all of our systems were singing as much as possible in order to enable not just the marketers, but ultimately the sales, product, engineering teams all along the way. Prior to Grammarly, I also worked at WeWork. I was an early employee for 4 years. And talk about scale, we went from roughly 25 buildings when I was there, and by the time I left, 500. And so every single month we were adding more and more buildings, and we were essentially growing 100% year over year for 4 years straight. So my role scaled 4 times, and we also scaled from like 1 language to 17 languages by the end of my time. So we had to make sure everything was built to scale to be prepared for not just localization and globalization, but for all different use cases and teams alike. Outside of that, I've also been a consultant in the past and worked with a number of different brands across industries, whether it's health, wellness, media, D2C, seed to Series C, you name it. I've seen all different types. And as a result, I have a lot of experience with a lot of different tools and a lot of opinions as well.
Opinions are great. Feel free to put your link in the chat, and we'll find a way to connect you, because before going too deep down into the details, almost every company I work with have MarTech challenges in one way or another. So we'll tap into that later. So gradually, right? Can you marketing operations sometimes is more used as a concept, not necessarily a team, right? Especially when company build out a team, they always come up with a few roles: head of marketing, product marketing, the branding, performance, right? Marketing analytics. Where actually marketing operation doesn't come up pretty much down the road. Can you maybe give some definitions, right? What's your interpretation of what does marketing operation include?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the definition is slightly different every company. So I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you one that's like a general overall, and then definition that I'm not a Taylor Swift person, but it'd be my Jacqueline's version of the album, that I think is really the trajectory of what marketing operations and marketing technology is going to become. So traditionally, MOPS is typically a multidisciplinary team. So it has a group of operators that are technical and can translate amongst other teams with three primary focuses: so systems, data, and MarTech. So from a systems perspective, that's creating, implementing systems and software to support marketing campaigns. And as a result, that supports all the greater multidisciplinary teams and cross-functional teams as a result. And from a data perspective, similar to what Bei was mentioning, maintaining hygiene of first, zero, and third-party data, as well as helping traditional marketers that might not be so used to using SQL code and navigating segmentation to reach segments, hopefully with easier, WYSIWYG, simpler ways to empower them. And often sometimes just includes some ad hoc data analysis. I'll never say I'm an analytics person, but I've definitely had to do a lot of analytics in my life. Even though it's not the best use of my time, it's very helpful to get your hands dirty and understand the data. And then lastly, MarTech, so maintaining, documenting, and even procuring the infrastructure to communicate with customers. So that can be dependent on the company, whether that's email as a channel or SMS, you name it. Every different channel, everyone has a different approach and need for their customer audience. But as I said, those are kind of the traditional categories, but the way I like to define MOPS is the team members are technical Swiss Army knives who identify problems and custom solutions and are translators to increase the tech stack interoperability to empower their primary stakeholder, which is marketing, of course, but at the same time, ensuring the data flow in alignment with your sales and go-to-market team, engineering, data, and product. If all of those partners are not also in unison, you're not going to get the outcome you're looking for.
Right. That's a lot of things. So basically, what my takeaway is, this is a function every founder needs to have a conversation with you right before you go on the growth process.
Pretty much.
Because it's already speaking to a few of the pinpoints I experienced myself or I observed, right? So even when I was talking, let Grammarly alone, right? That's a whole different story. And even when I was talking to my friends working in reputable startup like a Figma or Stripe, I often heard complaints about, hey, I'm hiring as a data scientist, right? But what I do is just data pipeline because data are not there, right? They end up doing a very boring ETL job. Here you go, right? Someone is helping out with the data hygiene, right? Then the life will be the outcome, right? Not just the life, but really the value creation would be fundamentally different, right? The other thing is the sum of the tool stack, right? So I one of the company I work with, just because they are stuck at the email tool that they weren't supposed to, and they take forever to onboard into another email tool. And during the time, right, think about, they're getting shut down. They're not able to send out lifecycle email. They're not able to send out as many onboarding emails. Think about how big of the millions of customers, how big a loss opportunity, right? You wouldn't need. It's a loss. It's a loss. So anyway, exciting. So maybe now with the definition, can you share some of the big wins from maybe we'll double click on that, right? What are the big wins you have achieved as a marketing ops person?
For
Maybe
sure.
we'll tap into a little more details.
Yeah, I'll highlight two in particular that I'm extremely proud of. Um, Prior to my departure at WeWork after 4 years, what once was a very simple English only email marketing program with minimal journeys and minimal customization. By the time I left, we had fully scaled our program into 17 languages, and just on a singular Monday, we were sending 500 unique newsletters. It was a lot of email, and that's not including any sort of campaign or life cycle along the way. Ultimately, I learned how to ruthlessly prioritize, but also deliver the most efficient and effective solutions from, well, we don't have an onboarding or welcome series. What is the ROI? It was kind of endless in terms of just building it up. When you start from nothing, at 0 to 1 phase is really fun, and also it's such an accomplishment when it's completed. Um, and the irony was when I joined Grammarly, I got my very first WeWork email, and I'm like, oh, I built that one. That's a nice little, um, you know, just full circle moment. But speaking of Grammarly, and I've kind of mentioned this in my introduction a bit, but as the founding team member, that in of itself is always a fun accomplishment, being kind of part of an established brand and company and bringing new life into a different department and different business line and kind of integrating it further. Um, I had the opportunity of securing just the best talent in in my opinion, in the world in the marketing operations space. And that's such a huge part of having an effective team and approach to not just marketing operations, but making things work. And so it was a lot of fun to build that up and also work with cutting edge partners like High Touch, which we mentioned, reverse ETL. How do you actually take action upon your data? As well as internal stakeholders to run very first product-led growth motion, which is kind of the new buzzword, I think, of the past year or so, and transitioning what was once distinctly a B2B and B2C business model into a combined linear B2C to B point solution, which is the way of the future. If you have scale and you're wanting to move into the enterprise and you've got a beloved brand, that's definitely the trend at the moment.
Definitely. I'm super curious. Like you mentioned that before it was two distinctive B2B and B2C motion, and now it's a one linear solution. Can you go a little bit deeper to elaborate on like what does that look like before, what does that look like after, and what are the tools and processes you put together?
Yeah. So on the B2C side, we had a fair amount of older technology that was in place, as well as on the B2B side, we had brand new, we'd never set this up before correctly technology. So a lot of it was kind of deconstructing what existed and kind of breaking it, re-architecting it to actually make sense to the business use case. And I'm sure we've all been there where we've hired, whether it's like a fractional individual or a certain implementation partner that maybe didn't actually know what they were doing. And so you kind of have to backtrack and rework. And so in parallel of establishing one system, at the same time, you see what's existing and realizing, oh, the old systems no longer apply to what the next phase of a company is. So a lot of that for myself, but also even working with Bei, was identifying what's next, what's the next generation approach to ultimately tying all of our data together, all of our marketing systems. So ultimately we ended up migrating from Marketing Cloud to Iterable as an example for our lifecycle email platform. And there's a lot of great ones that's happened to be the best one based off of our specific needs, and happy to go into those details if someone's interested. But ultimately then leveraging tools like a reverse ETL as well as an ETL to ensure we have all of our data in sync and in loop, and ultimately creating unified segments that we're able to disperse across different ESPs in order to ensure there was the same audience and grouping, not just between email, but also with paid advertising. We set this up so that we could have lookalike audiences and suppression lists and things like that. So really just thinking through how to make it all work together and just make things as easy as possible.
super helpful. And one challenge we face with a lot of PLG companies is the B2C tech stack and the B2B tech stack are almost like two different worlds. And in the iterable and Braze of the world, so they don't even integrate with Salesforce directly. How did you like solve that issue? Did you use the ETL tools to do those? And
yeah, great question. And I think we're within the next 3 to 5 years, someone's going to have a solution there. But yes, there really is no singular platform that can handle both. As much as I wanted to and try to fit a square peg in a circle, really tried. Ultimately, from a lifecycle perspective and demand generation perspective, you need separate tools because on a B2B side, at least historically, you need accounts. You needed a way to categorize your contacts and leads. And so we ultimately used Pardot as well as iterable. And so one for demand gen, particularly on the B2B side, and then all things lifecycle, both B2C and B2B, and what's becoming the blend out of iterable. But to your point, in terms of making them talk, that's where we were leveraging a tool like High Touch. There's similar reverse ETLs like Census and others out there where you unify it. And that's where working in particular with a marketing analytics team to ensure you do have the right tables, you're pulling in the right things, you're quadruple checking with your data scientists to make sure everything's set up correctly. But then once you have it all done, you've got the definitions written out, then those segments are created and everyone can build from there. And so, and they're each in their individual platforms. So you've got the same list, suppression list, and name it.
That makes sense. It's like there's a central place where those data segments sit, and then it sends through High Touch to iterable and to Pardot to execute and activate.
Yeah, and if we have time at the end, happy to kind of dig deep into what these tools actually are that I'm saying out loud if people are interested, because I know sometimes if I look at websites, I'm like, I still don't know what that means and what it actually means for what I'm trying to solve for.
Yeah, we need a deeper dive sessions on this tool. Or Holly, do you have any other follow-up?
Yeah, no, this is great. Like I always wondered, there are companies who use more of a like the CDPs, like the segments as the central place to manage all the segments, and there are people who just have a Snowflake or Redshift data warehouse to manage and then just pull up and just pull user lists. So yeah, I was just curious on how you guys resolved it.
Yeah, we'll get to a spicy take of mine later, I think, as it relates to CDPs.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we need a session on this B2C and B2B because Holly, exactly the same question you're having. We were just having that meeting yesterday with Jacqueline because another founder who is starting the B2C and B2B business came to me asking, hey, listen, right, we got a Salesforce for the B2B, we got a data lake for the B2C, but how to connect? What's the right tool to connect? So I have a organizational oncology. I know when to bundle the individual back to the 2B, right? How do I check them in a non-technical way so salesperson, operation person can know? So after chatting, well, unfortunately, it doesn't exist right, today. So you just have to query. There's still manual components. There are connecting tools like a High Touch, like a Fivetran, do the ETL, reverse ETL, right? There are other tools, but even in Grammarly, we had to rely on the team of analysts to pull the segments manually so many times. Exactly. And that's definitely a future, right? This is definitely potentially a future product opportunity because almost all the models are B2C and B2B. Yeah, it is the serious opportunity. But let's move on. This is a meaty one. We'll probably find a different way to tap into this. Perfect. Yeah. So in this case, right? Maybe it's slightly switch lens on like what companies should really start hiring the marketing ops because the way all the important concepts almost it does sound like every company needs this job done, right? But I don't think very few companies actually hire marketing ops. Even for Grammarly, we didn't have the team until year 13. Right?
It's true.
Yeah, what's your point of view, right? What's your advice to the founders about hiring,
Yeah,
about how to make sure don't have the don't leave a too big a tech deck somewhere down the road?
exactly. Um, I am of the opinion that your first few hires, no matter what department they are the most important. And same goes for your first marketing hire, whether that's a CMO or at a different level, recognizing MarOps is so foundational to the success of the entire department is really instrumental. And so with that, if you are in any way, shape, or form marketing yourself via email, SMS, push, or paid digital advertising, you want a MarOps person or at least fractional consultant to just get the groundwork laid to start as one of your early hires once you're starting to hit momentum and scale. Um, Early on, you might not need it, but once you're starting to think, oh, we're gonna have a CRM and a sales ops person, or you're gonna have a data lake where you're storing events and activities, that's where you want to get ahead of it because otherwise you're playing catch up the whole time.
Got it, got it. Sounds like your consultancy came into the right time, right? Because
Yes.
even yeah, I've always kept an eye on how the evolution of the MarTech. And if anyone has ever been to the chiefmartech.com to see the landscape, right, it went from 1,000 to 10,000 very quickly. So before, I think a handful tool out of the Google check could probably do the job. And right now, just because there is 2B, there's 2C, and now we have the cross borders, I think it is becoming more crucial to plan this ahead of time. But and like you said, the company may not have the budget or the need to get a full person, but talking to an expert, have a planning, have a blueprint, right? Hey, what's going on? What might be the 1 year, or what might be the 2 year? Would it be highly important in that?
Exactly. Having an advisor at least to help
Okay.
you identify the roadmap based off of your current kind of trajectory and milestones to at least
Mm.
make sure you're on the right path is super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, now any pitfalls or any big lessons learned? I think we always I have so many, but I would love to hear from you. Right. So any throughout your journey watching and then participating in companies that are have a very different setups, right? You almost every company could in hindsight, hey, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? Right? What
Always.
what are the fun cases you can share? Like things are just
Yeah.
probably really didn't work out so bad, but potentially with your intelligence, right, wisdom, things would be totally different.
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson I've learned after doing a number of transformational changes at different companies is if you're seeking to be a change maker, seeking innovation, seeking any sort of transformation that is time or cost effective or intensive, excuse me, or team intensive, you will really need to have advocates across every stakeholder, department, you name it, championing the idea because you need that groundswell of people realizing, oh, this is the change we need to make, or at least having it interjected all along the journey. Otherwise, you're going to deal with an uphill battle that may very well continue to stay an uphill battle until you decide to give up on the innovation you're seeking. It's something that I have seen repeatedly. The greatest success I've experienced is just when the entire team I'm working with cross-functionally recognizes the value of what we're wanting to do and all of us working together to make it happen. Uh-oh, we lost you. Bay, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm back. Okay. Yeah. Any of the most fun achievements you had, right? You like to share? Maybe the WeWork. I think it's Grammarly was a more recent story, right? WeWork sounds like
Mhm.
the trajectory, right? Well, let alone the downfall, right? Later on, that was more on the business side, right? But let's
Yes.
you were there when they are at a crazy growth, right? What other you mentioned about the email customize the email upgrade you're doing, right? What are the fun experience or pitfall you can maybe share a bit, right? How does what's your view from a mom's side?
Yeah. I think similarly, it's having tight-knit relationships with all of your key stakeholders. So at WeWork in particular, we were starting off from, we were a B2B business, but at the same time, we marketed to businesses, but we treated them as individuals, as members. So while it was still B2B, it was kind of B2C as well. And so it was very much trying to follow the B2B to me model of making things personalized as a business. And so we originally started off with a B2B tool, Pardot, which is an excellent tool, and ultimately migrated at the time, which was the cutting edge, to Marketing Cloud.
For the ones who are not familiar, including me, what does Pardot do? Maybe briefly.
Yeah, great question. So Pardot is technically called Marketing Cloud Account Engagement. I will always call it Pardot because that's the original name. But it is a wonderful B2B platform that is primarily used for demand gen and can be used as a marketing automation platform that is extremely tight-knit with Salesforce as an SFDC, which is your typical CRM that the majority of enterprises are using. It is a technical tool to use it correctly, but it is also relatively user-friendly as long as you're familiar with how to use an ESP. So it sends emails and you can create journeys and flows like that.
All right, thank you for clarification. All right.
Good question.
Yeah, there's a lot of tools. Just
there's so many.
Yeah, very few has used enough of those. So you touch on some of the collaborations. I think a question I forgot to mention to you is how does the org works around marketing ops, right? For example, what are the stakeholders, and typically how does the organization look like?
That's the toughest question you're going to ask, because every company is so different, and naming conventions of each team can be slightly different. So I'm going to go with the names that I've seen most of the time, but subject to change. But typically I've seen marketing operations live in 3 different places, but also have the same stakeholders ultimately. So it can live in marketing, it can live in revenue operations within sales or revenue, or in operations. And at the same time, you're always fundamentally working alongside engineering, alongside analytics, marketing analytics, data science, depending, product, your actual marketers, and then sales and go-to-market. So no matter what, it's always the same recipe of ingredients. It's just how it comes out will maybe be slightly different each time. But I'm a strong proponent of, for example, the operations team being separate from marketing, mainly just because I see it as a separation of church and state, where you're able to be more nimble because the KPIs or the typical OKRs a marketing team will have doesn't quite reflect the binary often that an operations team has, where it's, did we accomplish X, yes or no, versus did we see a 5% increase click rate, something like that, which is a little bit more tactical. But great question in terms of where it could sit, and also who do you typically work with.
Got it. So yeah, I agree. From the technical and the actual work standpoint, it does make sense to sit closer either with the operation revenue ops team, or even maybe even the eng team, right? I don't know whether that's the case, because the tool, there's a lot of engineer collaboration in there, and a lot of the work you mentioned, as I observe, are actually done by the engineers, right? Maybe some have more tech knowledge. Great, awesome. A lot don't. So that may cause
there's a lot of education.
That may cause some of a mismatch from a technicality to the use cases, right? So cool, interesting. Good. Learned new things today. With that, how to measure the success of marketing ops, right? This is something, because a lot of things you said are very fundamental, right? There is from your work to the observable outcome, there's probably another 1 or 2 stages, and your work sounds like it contributes to sometimes the revenue, or another time contributes to the efficiency, right? The good tool saves power and cut down the cycle time. But yeah, how did your boss or how should leadership evaluate the success in general?
Yeah, I see a lot of this as if you're investing time in tools, you need to understand the ROI of those tools. So if you're sending a lot of emails or you have a lot of customers, anytime you have high volume, that's when the price of any of these tools goes up. The smaller you are, the cheaper. The larger, it's just kind of a double-edged sword that comes with growth. It's a beautiful thing, but it means you have to invest that much more. So ensuring on every email you're getting some sort of outcome, whether it's increased conversion rates or you're able to attribute it increases to overall sales cycle. That's some of the harder things because marketing attribution is its own segment that could be talked about endlessly because it's not easy to track, especially in the B2B space. It takes a longer amount of time, but navigating ROI and at least being able to show the time horizon of how much it would cost to make your money back on any specific investment. It's super important to your finance team. Something that's really helpful and pivotal from a marketing operations standpoint is a lot of enablement. And so understanding adoption and utilization rates of the tools. The last thing you want is to have, say, 20 MarTech tools, but only 5 of them are actually getting used. Not only is that a waste of money, but that means you're not seeing value. So you want to ensure the right folks are using it. They know how to use it. You've got the permissions and governance set up. And so also another relatively easy way sometimes, depending on the organization, is cost savings. Oftentimes there's an overabundance of marketing technology, and as each new release, each quarter, there's new features. There's a lot of just features that every tool is starting to incorporate. So there can be easily tool reduction. And so just streamlining that too makes things easier. And then lastly, an easy one that something we haven't really talked about from a legal perspective is privacy laws. As globalization continues, the GDPR, you name it, CAN, SPAM, CASL, every country is coming out with new and more improved protections for consumers, which is incredible. But it also means you need to be more on top of it than ever before. So tracking or having the ability to track how many regulatory or privacy inquiries you're getting a month versus actual lawsuits, which hopefully you're never getting, but ensuring those are reduced or not happening at all is a really good way, because the last thing you want in the EU is getting dinged for 4% of your company's annual revenue. So you want to stay on the right side of the law.
Oh, that's too crucial. It reminds me the case when there was time I was doing a direct mail campaign and then follow up with a Facebook campaign, and that was right around when the CCPA came into place, the California privacy law, and it empowers the consumer to ask the ads, hey, how do you find us, right? Like we actually, one person sent an email to say, how did you find me on Facebook? And they were still nervous on what's the right answer. Are we good? Are we good?
Yeah. It's great to be empowered as a consumer, and as a business, we all need to be able to adjust and adapt and respect consumers as well. And so it's a tricky balance for sure.
Sounds good. Yeah, but you did brought up a lot of good point on the ROI calculation, right? The way yes, it is a few steps from actual revenue source, but if you do the math, it's actually not too hard to come up with the trade-off analysis and then make the right decision on that. Whether is that good or bad. So cool, awesome. So the next one is how it's a lot of learnings, right? You mentioned about the tools, you mentioned about the thinking process and the architect, and my only experience is whenever I check on Google to say, hey, how does this architecture works? I always got linked into some company's blog that seemingly trying to do something, right, but it points to their own products, right, as a result. So as that being said, always going to be biased. It could be right bias, but it's never going to be. And I don't think I ever come across anything that has enough of a comprehensive comparison or the situational analysis. So how should people learn more about this knowledge on this field more systematically?
Yeah, I always think about this from a trial by fire situation. That's how I've always learned, is just getting your hands dirty. And that's in a few ways, but just doing and learning it as you do it. So if you're seeking out an ESP, look out an ESP is email service provider. Look up all the different email platforms, and then once you have all of your pain points, start narrowing down either through their website or through talking with their sales team and identifying what actually suits your needs. Or you can do the cheat code and hire someone like myself or other consultants who know the space. But if you really want to do it for yourself, if you're early on and this is intriguing to you, start at a company where you can grow those muscles and understand just the tactical. How do you actually send out an email? What is the implication on the technical side? And how does segmentation and audience sequencing work there? And then learn the ins and outs of where the data flows. That's how I became interested in the space. Is I became best friends with my data engineers because I was like, I don't know SQL yet. Can you show me how to get this segment? So really getting my hands dirty in Redshift, and at the same time, ask questions of every department from engineering, product, sales, you name it, because as a result, you learn more and more of what their needs are, which means you'll understand and be more informed of how marketing can help there and what tools you could potentially need. So as long as you are more curious than anything, you'll be able to navigate it.
I have a follow-up question, Jacqueline. Like, a lot of the pitch are similar. So even if I talk to the sales team, even if I like go through their websites, and there's only so much I can understand the sort of specific quirks of a tool after I onboarded it and like used it for a while and hear the feedback from my team. And for a regular, like a person who is at a company for 2, 3, 4 years at a time, and the tool changing so fast,
Right.
it's almost like, oh, like I don't know if there's a better thing out there, or like how much is better so that it's enough for me to rip off my existing tool and find a new tool to replace. Like how do you balance that when you are at a company and it's tools like it's like there's things that doesn't work so well, but when do you make that decision to rip it off?
Yeah, I always see it as if it is taking more time from not just your team, but the actual execution of what you're trying to accomplish. If you are so inefficient as a result, or you are out spending because you're procuring external help because you don't understand the tool, you name it, that's when you start kind of have to be introspective of, okay, what is the actual pain point we're experiencing? Is it we don't have the right team in place? We don't have the right tool in place? And these are hard questions because a lot of biases can come into play here. A lot of, especially in the marketing realm, where tracking is maybe not the easiest sometimes, especially when it's not just direct to consumer. You send an email, they purchase straight from that email. When it's not as an easy typical conversion, you really have to do a pros and cons list, essentially, whether it's in your head as a team, it's understanding just all of the complaints. And that's where I see MarOps as translators of, we're seeing pain points, we're seeing issues. Are they actually urgent? Are they actually a priority? Or are they just a nice to have of, yes, I would really like if that automatically filled something out as opposed to me manually doing it. But is that 30-second amount of team time of ineffective productivity actually going to be cost benefit analysis? Or is it the team is spending 6 hours of their day just trying to pull one list kind of thing? And is that something we can automate and maybe reduce down to 45 seconds? And so it's kind of weighing the balance of those things. But to the point of looking at blogs of existing tools and seeing if those biases come to play, that's where really just digging in and also speaking with former customers or current customers and getting their own gotchas and understandings of, because no tool's perfect. I am the type of person that would much rather know the gotchas and what to look out for than even the positives, because if you don't know what your boundaries are of what you need to work within, the constraints, I feel like you're limited to yourself. You need to know, okay, these are the restrictions of the tool, and so I can perform as a result.
Yep.
Just kind of knowing, did you have a really good meal for breakfast and did you sleep well and you know you're going to be able to perform for that day? Or maybe you didn't sleep as well as you would like, so maybe be a little bit kinder and have more grace to yourself. And so it's that tricky balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually curious on your philosophy around best in class versus all-in-one tools. And even I think before it was like, oh, best in class, of course, right? And then what comes with it is lots of integration and lots of like trying to match data. And then you have like a SaaS bloat.
Yes.
At the same time, so a lot of vertical best-in-class tools I'm trying to also expand. I noticed in like a last couple of years, it's like, oh, we do e-signature very well, but now we do like your proposal templates too, and like so everyone is like trying to do a little bit of expansion. At the same time as like the all-in-one tools, everyone call themselves an all-in-one tool. I can do ABC. And then
there's some false marketing out there.
There's a growth pressure from the boss, right? How to make more money. So
Yeah.
what else you can do?
How do I diversify my product? Exactly.
Right. Yeah. What's your hot take on that?
Yeah. The priority order for me is simple, but not at the expense of interoperability. So the simpler, the fewer tools, the better. However, if there is a tool that is so best in class that it completely will change how the entire system will work, then number two becomes the priority. So it's all just dependent on what that pain point is. Is the pain point kind of before this started, for example, if you're a company, you're sending emails and you're having deliverability problems. Is the pain point your data? Is the pain point the ESP that's actually sending those emails? Is the pain point the content? So you have got three different forks in the road of kind of what to look at next. And so one, go to the service provider, ask, is there an issue? And maybe on your own, independently, validate all of your emails to ensure there's minimal spam traps or invalid emails. And then third, maybe do an assessment of, hey, is the content of our emails accessible? Are people actually clicking on this? Is our pixel in the right location? There's a few different ways to approach any singular problem. And so then from there, if all three are checking the boxes, everything seems fine, maybe it's, what is the general reputation of the shared IP we're on? Is it something beyond what's in our control? And then like, oh, is the email service provider we're actually using maybe not the best in class at this point? That's when you can start evaluating and thinking through what's next.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I see Carol popped in a question. Do we want to try to interject or wait until after?
Let's do this. Yeah, what's your preferred ways to be reached out by service providers? Sales?
Ooh, this is going to be a hot take for me. I don't want to be reached out to ever.
Well, if they bring a nice box of gifts, would that change your mind?
No, I'm not easily swayed. Honestly, I am always interested in what the latest technology is. And I will say at this point, it's really hard to break through, whether it is our spam filters working really well of emails, whether we've been opted into or not, or, paid advertising, bringing to surface the interesting tools. I know for me, I like to curate how my inbox is, my, LinkedIn, what things can come in and out. So I don't have a preferred way. Honestly, the only preferred way I can think of is word of mouth. It's other folks in the industry, a part of your community. And something we haven't had a chance to fully talk about is the MarTech community is very tight knit, and it's very communal in that there's a lot of conversations, because not only did Bei mention there's so many tools, there's I think roughly 20,000 different marketing technologies out there right now. So even my landscape of, I would say, roughly knowing about 100, 150 tools is a fraction, but that's also because there's so many new ones coming up each month, each year, which is amazing. Oh, thank you, Bei. But to that point, it's having happy customers. That's the best way to sell, even though it's not the most attributable and actionable and the easiest way. But if you have a good product and you've got a great team supporting your customers, that's the best way.
Oh yeah, I'm curious. It's like you mentioned, like there's so many tools out there, right? Like MarTech tools, and I've noticed in recent years there some of these like negotiation on your behalf platforms, like vendor topic, and like the pitches, it saves you money, and it negotiate on your behalf. What's your hot take on those?
Oh man, I have friends at both companies, so I'll try to be thoughtful. If you have a strong procurement team, an actual dedicated procurement team, I don't see the full entire need unless it's a very lean team. That said, if you don't really have a procurement team and you want that support, I think it's an invaluable tool, especially from a comps perspective. And comps meaning or commercials, excuse me, perspective, seeing what other companies of your size, if you're not familiar with said tool or general pricing, because a lot of companies like to change them each year and see what they can get out of you depending. That's where I see a lot of value. But to that point, it just depends on if your procurement team is completely overbooked, you don't have one. I see the value, and it's really just dependent on if it is a value add to your company's needs.
Makes sense.
Got it. That's my same question, because I came across a founder who are just working with a reseller. Sounds like right, the person, the layer in between the buyer and the seller, but they do some value added job on both sides, right? One is helping the product to reach to the right customer. The other hand is definitely doing some value add work to help the buyer decide what tool to use, even including some of the big tools everybody knows. But to your point, right, is that even right for us? Is that even right for them? So yeah, cool. So yeah, definitely an opportunity. However, I don't know how many are using that service. So there seems to be still a lot of gaps or potential voids to fill. Okay. All right, Carol, hopefully that answered your question. Yeah,
great question.
Great question. So it's a hard one though. So this is a supply and demand side. I think this is, I think it reminds me of a friend's company who are specifically building up. You mentioned about the cost saving, right? I do remember a company called bluesky.io. I believe that person built a company specifically to optimize the Snowflake cost. Just because, yes, you know how to choose the tools, but you don't know the intricacy of things, right? So you end up that you actually waste the more money than saving the money. So there were even that single function. Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot of venture opportunities here and there.
For sure.
Yeah, can you maybe bring up some of the tools? What you went to conferences, right? You went to Eaterball, you are connected to the tools, right? What are the new tools that you find interesting recently?
Yeah, so that's something I'm most intrigued about. It's maybe not explicitly a MarTech tool, but it's gonna be a brand new medium that everyone's gonna have to try to adopt, is what Apple is finally doing. They're finally allowing and introducing RCS, which is Rich Communication Services Messages. It's going to essentially replace SMS and MMS. It's been an extremely long time coming, as in Android's had it for quite a while, and there's been a lot of false starts and promises along the way, but the beta is finally kind of starting, and it's going to be released later this year. And I got the opportunity to see a beta within Apple's iMessages, and it is a complete game changer. And I'm kind of screaming it from the rooftops for everyone to know this channel is going to change the game for marketers, for engineers, for customer support teams. And honestly, it'll likely replace a number of apps because it's native to each individual's phone. And so you're able to, as an example, purchase tickets, ask questions about your account, check the delivery date of things, submit if you have an issue, you name it. But it's also a promotional channel where you can send rich or enriched messages, and it's much more than just, for example, an SMS or push notification. And it's native to your messages. So it's not quite a MarTech tool, but it's a functionality that's going to be coming down the pipe. So I'm really, really bullish and excited about what's to come there.
Sounds good. So it sounds like a lot of revenue, new revenue for Apple there. But
yeah, probably.
We'll keep an eye. We'll keep an eye. But it does sound very crucial with the iOS changes last year. It did caught a lot of marketers or brand by surprise, and now it sounds like this is the step trying in a way could probably mitigate the tracking and then just to harvest all the revenue, grab all the revenue within the platform. How about the tools you don't like, right? What's like overrated and everyone talk about, but you don't consider valid? What's your opinion?
I kind of previewed my hot take.
The more opinionated, the better.
Yes, I kind of previewed my hot take earlier, but I'm gonna say it: CDPs. There are so many different definitions of what a customer data platform is supposed to be, what it can deliver on, and there's not a singular tool in the market that does all the different definitions. And the intent is usually to be a 360 holistic view of a customer, so you can create segments as a result. I have yet to see it happen, and that's across every major CDP. Every team I know that is using one, I say I'm so sorry, and they all like sigh and like, oh my gosh, you understand. And so I just see them as costly, bulky, ultimately middleware on top of, if you have an existing data lake as an example, or just data backend, you don't need it. You can use other tools. We kind of mentioned reverse ETLs, where you don't even need engineers to build pipelines anymore. You can just connect directly with Snowflake, Databricks, BigQuery, you name it, into your marketing or non-marketing platforms. A tool like this is really beneficial while speaking about email, paid social, you name it, but it also can be used for sales. It can be used for payroll, workday, you name it. There's a lot of functionality that is multi-use beyond just what a traditional CDP. So I just don't see them living up to the hype.
That's actually surprising because CDP is such a hot topic.
I know.
Companies like a Segment is gaining all the tractions. Even Reforge is telling everyone go use a Segment, and Segment connect to everything. Otherwise, you're going to have to hire a whole team of engineers to do the job. So, but to your point, I certainly heard the other side of the story where things gets very bulky, gets really expensive at some point, right? It's almost even more expensive to go with the CDP. So interesting. Yeah, I feel that could be its own deep dive to get into, because I know a few are actively looking into the CDP right now. Okay.
Is it because like you have to go to the lowest denominator of data? Because sometimes I feel like it resort to the smallest data set or the lowest data denominator in order to have that data, and sometimes it's not fully what you can get directly from the platforms.
Exactly.
You still have to go to the original platform. An example is like Google Ads, right? It's like it doesn't get all the data, so I still need to connect with Google Ads directly to get a lot of the data.
Yeah, and why not have that all within your own infrastructure? So, and this is where I'm extremely bullish on having an ELT to your data warehouse and then using reverse ETL to transform it or leverage it any way you want. And that can be with segments, that can be with matching, you name it. There's a lot of different ways. But I see it as cleaner, simpler, and you just don't need extra middleware to do such a thing. And you don't need the most technical of teams either. You just need at least that 1 or 2 person advocate that knows what they're doing to be able to make it happen. Like as an example, Bei and I set up essentially an ELT in about a month and a half, 2 months with the help of our engineering friend. And that was 6 weeks of that was mainly just procurement. And the latter 2 weeks was we got it all set up in 15 different destinations in that quick of time. It was pretty great. And thank goodness we did it when we did it, because it was before we had a fully functioning data warehouse and we were able to get ahead of the curve.
That's amazing. Jacqueline, thank you so much. This has been such an illuminating conversation. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And thank you everyone for attending. This does trigger more questions than answers to me, so I will find ways to follow up with you. But thank you for sharing all your journey and experience with us. This is very, very helpful. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Everyone wish Bei a happy birthday. We're not going to let you go without it.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. That's the highlight of the birthday today.
I hope not.
All right. It is. So great to spend time with the friends and the colleagues, definitely for all the inspiring conversations. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Holly. Have a great day.
Have a great one, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.